That's what it's like for us transplants. Okay.
What part of Texas are you in?
I am in San Antonio.
Ooh, I used to live in San Antonio for 2 years.
Yeah.
Lovely city.
It is. I got nothing bad to say about San Antonio.
Have you connected with the Humanity Forward Texas group?
I don't think so. No.
Their website, if you want to check it out, is humanityforwardtexas.org. And they're all over the place in Texas and doing some cool things. So.
Okay, cool. Cool. That's good. Yeah, I really would like to hook up with some local folks.
Yep.
What was that? Humanity? Oh, thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, Janika.
Hey, it's Yannicka with a Y.
Oh, Yannicka. Hey. Is that Hebrew or?
I wish it was that cool. No, it's Finnish.
Oh, that's pretty cool too.
Nice. What state are you in?
I'm in Queens, New York.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Where my dad is. Okay. All right, Colleen, whenever you want to get started, it's about 6 minutes after 5:30.
Sure, let's go for it. Okay.
Andrew, could you send us live? Just let us know when you've got it. All right.
Hi, welcome to Sunday Night Live with the Humanity First movement. It is August 9th. We are a movement with a vision where a data-driven government prioritizes intrinsic human value and quality of life. We'll be running through tonight an overview and then discussing board elections, Humanity First Day, Basic Income March, not necessarily in that order, and then Adam Christensen is our candidate spotlight. Then we'll go to the breakout room to hang. And there's a link to the slide deck let's see, something's, okay. A link, okay, what's going on here? Okay, so the link to the slides is, Yenny, could you drop that in the chat, please, so that anyone can open that in their browser and bookmark it? Good, because we'll be covering a lot tonight, and links to everything we cover are in these slides listed here. Okay. All right, good. So we can take a question, and you can use Zoom hands if you have a question going through. If you can rename yourself through Zoom, add your state after your name. Sorry, I'm not a good example of that right now. And we appreciate you having your video on so we can get to see you, meet you, and know you. So what the Humanity Forward movement is, we're a network that evolved out of the Yang 2020 volunteer movement. We're working with Humanity Forward to define and grow this energy, vision, and community that began with the Yang 2020 campaign. We aim to harness and convert the passion of the Humanity First movement into something sustainable that can drive us to grow through 2024 and beyond. And we'll connect you with folks in your state and chapter area toward that effort. We'll onboard you to explore our working groups. We also watch movies and hang and just generally kick back and enjoy the Humanity First company we share with each other. Joining us tonight, Yannicka and Clay, would you like to introduce yourselves? New to this, Yannicka, you can unmute. Yes.
Yeah, Yannicka, originally from Finland, and the reason why I kind of revolved into this network is through humanness, like the basic humanness that I have back home. And I've been in the United States for 6 years now, and it's been a struggle, to be honest, to find like-minded people. So it was nice to hear Yang talk so much of what felt like home. And then I started, digging deeper, and there's a whole community of people. So that's pretty cool. I'm an artist of all kind. I do. As you can probably see, there's a bunch of poetry on my walls. There's mixed media back here with a peace sign and some paintings behind me. So kind of do everything on the art side and then tech side too. I don't know how much time I have. Please just like do this if I'm going too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, tech side. I've been advising elder people with technology, which has given me a crazy insight of how our entire world is so tech oriented right now. So yeah, that's kind of where my mind is at currently, and yeah, what I identify with.
Great, thank you. Clay Mallory?
Yeah, hi, I'm Clay. I'm in Texas. And like I said, I'm originally from Philadelphia. I landed in Texas by way of the Air Force. I retired after 22 years in San Antonio. And it's been a great decision. Both retiring and being in San Antonio. Let's see, I got to humanity. I've been watching a lot of YouTube, right? And I liked Andrew during the campaign for the Democratic nomination. I thought he was like the only really smart guy who was talking, and his smartness wasn't just technical. It was a real humanness to it. And he was right, and that was the thing. He was right. So I have lately I was watching Andrew on YouTube. He's got that Yang Speaks or Yang Hang or something. I can't remember what it's called, but that's where I found out. What is it?
It's Yang Speaks.
Yang Speaks. Yeah.
Yang hangs too. So it's both.
But that's where I found out about Humanity First. And the moment I heard about it, I was, oh, that's where I need to go. I was volunteering. I've volunteered all my life. I've been volunteering. But I was volunteering with an organization to help out military veterans. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could decrease their workload somewhat?
Mm-hmm.
So and it was time. It was time to. It's just time to do something. You can just feel it in the air. So I was really happy to find this place. And when I read the value statements, I said, "Oh yeah, I could have wrote that." So I felt like I was in the right place.
That's awesome. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Colleen, you're muted.
Showed it back up. Okay, great. So we're back to here. We had said that we'll connect you to a state chapter. That's very true. You will get to, there are 18 active states that have, active chapters. Welcome, Michigan. Shout out to Kevin and Ronald and Jim, who've been organizing this chapter. To find your state chapter or start your state chapter, to find other people near you, go to the website. It's interactive. You click on your state, it pops up, and you get to enter some email information to get that rolling. All right. Good. So some of the fun things that we do, we have Humanity Hangs on Tuesday and Friday nights. They are on this calendar that links to this are in the links to all things slide. And we have regional hangs where people in neighboring states get together. The Southeast has been very active with that. And then also we have phone bank parties. We'll talk more about that when we get to the sort of action section tonight. All right. And some tools to get started. There's the Google Calendar, which there's a direct link to that calendar in the link to all slides. We have the Slack workspace, which we'll get into. This is like a social media type of space, but designed for activists to get organized and be effective leaders and organizers. And there's also linked again a structured distinction between HFRR, Humanity Forward's Slack, and Humanity First Movement Slack. So you can see the difference between and how they also knit together very nicely and are very, cohesive as two fronts on the same movement. So we work in Slack, and these are the channels for our working groups. Onboarding is open to new members. We are growing. So if you are out there on YouTube, if you're like not exactly even part of this organization yet, our onboarding is a great place to start because it's where we develop how we make this organization accessible and inviting. So it's the most accessible and inviting working group to join when you're starting out. New channels we have are the Humanity First Day channel. The reason we have that, Elaine will get into about Humanity First Day. We have the comms branding channel. Again, why we have that, Paige will get into. And there is also a new channel for direct action and a new channel for calling and texting. So we hope you come join us. Elaine, are you on here for to tell us about Humanity First Day? Good.
Yeah, I'm right here. Thanks, Colleen. So welcome, everyone. So my name is Elaine Way, California Leadership. And so this Saturday is actually our National Humanity First Day for 2020. And so California and Humanity First Movement are leading the event with Humanity Forward as a major partner. So you'll actually be hearing Andrew Yang talk about this event in his fireside chat on August 11th. I'm not sure of the time yet, but look out for that. He'll mention how Humanity Forward is also, partnering on to this day, which we actually had several Humanity First Days last year, which were expressions and community outreach and positive actions to sort of like have an individual or a group. So it's not, you don't have to be in a group to do this. It's to express what Humanity First means to you. So that's can be a very personal, very powerful thing. So obviously during this time of pandemic and upheaval and other things, like we want to pretty much give people a day like, hey, let's remind each other of like what Humanity First means to us. Like the fact that we're not alone. We have a lot of people out there who are looking to strive for positivity and to express those values, right? So a couple examples of events that you may be able to do, obviously, is trash cleanup is one of the easiest things. Delivering food supplies, planting trees, collecting donations for a food bank or charity, writing letters to senior centers. But those are not like the only things you can do. It's basically what you believe is Humanity First. And so what we would like for you to do as an action is to do the activity, but also to share it widely online with the hashtag Humanity First Day. Because last year it was really inspiring to see people who are not even part of the Yang Gang just hop on and be like, oh, this is happening today. And it's happening all day, pretty much. People discovered old friends, connected with new ones, kind of just like, is it basically just try to get everyone kind of back in that groove of, like Humanity First. So if you want to, there's actually more information on our Slack, which is what Colleen shared earlier, number 2, Humanity First Day. We'll be happy to see you there.
Thank you, Elaine. Board elections are coming up in 2 weeks, Sunday, August 23rd. Angelo Mendoza and Paige Havener of Arizona and New York, respectively, are the continuing board members serving to October 8th. This leaves 5 board member slots opening for this 4-month term, August 23rd to December 13th. Voting will be Sunday at the meeting, and all candidates must be present. All voters must be present to vote. Candidates will each give a 30-second statement. And the timeline is you can submit yourself now for your candidacy. The deadline is midnight the 18th, so that's a little more than a week. And then on Thursday, the candidate submissions are announced. On Sunday, we vote at 8:30 at the beginning of the meeting, I believe. Either way, it'll be at the meeting. Okay. Next now. Onto Paige's display of branding. Are you ready, Paige?
Yes. Hello. You all hear me okay? Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. My cat.
No one else was responding. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. My cat ate my headphones, so sorry if my audio is not great. Yeah, so I'm here to talk. I'm here from the comms working group. I want to talk about right now in comms, we're reconfiguring branding. So this is some initial ideation. Next slide, please. So if you aren't aware, our mission statement, you can read it there. But with branding, we wanted to take our mission statement and really condense it down into its essentials, and then use those as like inspiration for visuals. So the abbreviated version that I kind of narrowed it down to was building a world that puts people first, and people and our well-being as like the central thought around that. Next. We also, in creating a brand, are thinking about our audience and their needs and values. Colleen, I think it's jumping around. Would you mind going back one? Thank you. Yeah, so the three groups that I kind of identified as our biggest audiences were, general Americans, voters that are perhaps disengaged, frustrated, angry with the current system, and want transparency, fairness, and change, but don't know how to get that. Also identified a group which is progressives. So if you think about burners, people who've supported AOC, or in general progressive policies, UBI is certainly a progressive policy, and I think we overlap a lot with that group. This group is in general pro-socialist ideas or progressive ideas, and to this group generally identity is very important. The idea of individuality and freedom. And then the third group, of course, is the Yang Yang, or the Humanity First movement, which is a very diverse political group. So not just progressives by any means, but like independents, other parties, really anyone. But a lot of us feel like outsiders, or feel like we haven't necessarily had a place to fit politically before, or weren't happy with the current two-party system. Obviously, we're all about math because we're the Yang Gang, so we love numbers, research-based solutions, etc. And of course, we're putting humanity first. So putting people at the center of things and wanting to highlight people's humanity and be compassionate. Next slide, please. So the brand voice, haven't gotten super far with this in terms of development, but obviously we want it to be honest, forward-thinking, welcoming, and accessible, meaning like not quite so much jargon or slang that can be confusing to new people. We want to make sure that the voice we're speaking with via through emails or image captions, whatever it is really welcoming and really straightforward, right? Like compassionate. Next slide. So the general needs of the branding I broke down as well. On the right there, you can see the Yang Gang values. Like way back in the campaign, this is what the campaign put out for like their 6 core values that they wanted volunteers to live by. So those are humanity first, integrity, transparency, abundance, which is not having a mindset of scarcity, living the opposite way, grace and forgiveness, not left, not right, forward, which I think everyone has said, and the branding also needs to be nonpartisan and inclusive, because again, we're appealing to a very wide range of people, not just Democrats or Republicans, or even people who are necessarily already involved in politics and have like chosen a side. Also, we don't want it to be overtly political, because of course we do engage in a lot of political activity, but there are people that I think humanity first is also a lifestyle and how you communicate with people, and like presenting like a unifying culture instead of a divisive culture. We also, of course, want to emphasize our values and emphasize like a sense of life and humanity, because humans first. Also, we need to have a slightly different branding from Humanity Forward, which is Andrew's organization, whereas we are Humanity First Movement, which is a slightly separate organization. Of course, a lot of overlap there in terms of volunteers, but we are different, and that is important. Next slide, please. And so this, getting into more of the visuals, I'm looking at, or the comms group is looking at header and body fonts. You can see some bold, action-oriented header fonts. They look a little boring here, but they do perhaps need to be quite readable. And then body fonts on the right. So thinking of a serif or a sans serif here, something that's very human and readable, but that doesn't scream math and like textbook, if you know what I mean. Next slide, please. And then this is kind of a couple of the color schemes we were looking at. We actually, during the last meeting where I presented this, we decided to go with color scheme number 2. It has a dark blue and an indigo, and then some really hot red, or like a red-orange kind of hot color, and then like a salmon color. So these colors, most all the color schemes included a blue, which is very stable, neutral, and technical, and then a warm color to complement that, to kind of like a bright contrast, and something that's more warm and human. And then here's some imagery that we might use in association with like our graphics. So if you've seen graphics online, right, for like events, for like phone banking parties, or like Humanity First Day, for example, we had an image for earlier that will be shared on social media. We're going to use some images such as like stock imagery, or imagery that we take at our own rallies, at our own events and things like that. Next slide. Now I'm going to go through a couple of visual elements that I think will end up being used. So one is lines and arrows, right? Directionality, individuality, coming together, moving forward, right? Something we want to emphasize. Next, gradients, I think used in a certain way can really evoke energy, power, acceptance, right? Like we're not putting ourselves in clear boxes. We're kind of defining edges and boundaries. I kind of like that. Next slide. Another thing, graphically, we want to imply movement. And I think that can be done through repetition and variation. So, right, we are a movement, but we want to make change, and we want to emphasize that graphically. We don't want things to feel static and unmoving. Next. And then, of course, we're about putting humans first. So fingerprints and hands, things that are kind of unique to people. Fingerprint is symbolic of, one's personal individual identity. And hands also evoke connection, community, and getting work done. And then waves. So, when we, I don't know if you heard we're going to bring the wave, or like the wave is going to crash on Washington, right? Like we're bringing the wave, is kind of a slang term that the Yanking have used for a while. And the idea of having waves, I think Yenny also mentioned in a comment, like a wave is like a really strong force. It's unstoppable. It's inevitable. And it, I don't know, could be a really good metaphor for a movement. Also, visual imagery of mountains, so implying stability, building up towards something, something that's like long-standing and foundational. And I think UBI is something that's very foundational. So, and there's something very powerful about mountain imagery. I think that's all of the symbols, but basically using all that imagery, picking and choosing imagery that we like for ourselves, and then testing out what works best with our color schemes and our fonts, and coming up with something that's kind of cohesive and that will help brand the movement, because it's very important to have like a cohesive professional brand. I know that it sounds kind of silly and decorative, but it really does matter to people when they see something, the colors and the fonts, like their first impression is meaningful. And if we can engage them in that first impression instead of like they just keep scrolling past it, that's a potential to gather far more volunteers, right? And get people's attention. So branding can actually be very important. Next slide is what this branding is going to be applied to. So the final deliverables for this kind of branding project that we're doing is a brand guideline document. They'll have fonts, colors, examples of how to use all these things, like sample imagery, etc. Of course, we'll probably make tweaks to our website to reflect color schemes and fonts. We will make Canva templates. So Canva is like an online poster making service. So you don't have to have Photoshop. You don't have to have any of these fancy softwares. You just click the link and you can go in and like fill some text in and move things around to make it your own. And we'll have those Canva templates for like pamphlets, printable, social media event images, endorsement images, as we need them. Anything that's going to go on social media, like icons and header images and YouTube video thumbnails. So yeah, that's our branding project. I hope you all like it. If you're super interested in fonts and colors and whatnot, please head over to the comms channel or the comms_ branding channel. It's like a sub channel under the comms channel to see more about it and give your feedback. Thanks.
That's right. Thank you, Paige.
Sorry, that was done.
So where are we now? All right, going over actions. And this, I don't know, to some people actions is kind of a activism jargon, but it really just refers to what's done in the outside world that's visible and engaged and having an impact or starting ripples, either makes it. We've got a big action coming up. It's the Basic Income March. It's just what it sounds. It's a march happening in many cities and towns and bringing up awareness for the need for basic income and bringing out massive numbers of people to show the popularity of basic income. Yeah, you can learn more at basicincomemarch.com. Anything else we need to add on to that at this moment?
Yeah. So since it's COVID, obviously March doesn't always work in a lot of places. So it's kind of a morphed action. So there's the option to march, to do a driving parade, to do biking through an area, standing on street corners with signs, just like setting up a couple streets in a row, doing art installations, or really anything else you can come up with to support the public show of support for basic income. There's a meeting on every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. Christina Wu just put the information for that in the chat. You can also come to the Basic Income March channel. I believe that's Intake Action, Colleen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. On the slide that listed the new channels,
Yep.
Intake Action, that's where you can keep up with Basic Income March information.
And then if you could go to the next slide. Yeah. So this is a current map of where the locations are. If you don't see one near you and you're able to plan something, even if it's just getting like 4 or 5 groups of people to stand out on a couple street corners for a few hours, or doing a driving parade, because those are super awesome. You get to honk and be loud and it's fun. So I would definitely check out the ability to do any of that. If you go to the Basic Income March website, there's a Get Involved button up at the top. It'll give you the links to create your event, to make an event location. And definitely come to the meeting on Monday nights. That is where most of the organizing is happening, and that's all happening through Income Movement, one of our very, very, very close partners. So,
can I add one thought on things that people can host as well?
Yes.
This is Jim McBride. I have the Political and Civic channel that was created recently, and I wanted to suggest to folks that they can create events on the Democratic Party website, the DNC website, and host like a convention watch party. So if your groups are interested in the convention, it could be a good excuse to regroup with your chapters and maybe discuss hosting something for the Basic Income March, and other activities. Like we still have a stimulus process going on right now, and you might want to get people on board with reaching out to their members of Congress and stuff, and working together on actions with that. So I did want to throw that out there. I put it in the channel, but I'll also put it in the chat. And I did want to let everyone know that there's going to be 2 educational events coming up right around the convention. A campaign academy that is free for 4 straight days, hosted by an organization I've attended their events before, Arena. And their main goal is to just educate people on how to organize and work in politics. So that might be of interest. And also Netroots Nation is coming up this weekend, which some folks might have heard of. It was created by dailycoast.com. So hopefully, those.
Yeah, that conference is looking like it's going to be really awesome. It's been moved to online this year. For folks who don't know about it, it's basically a progressive convention with lots of speakers.
Next, actions that we have. All actions on an ongoing basis are going into that Take Action channel. So that's a good one to have starred and keep up with in your Slack sidebar. But the other ongoing action that we are doing now, and especially for Adam's campaign too, is phone banking. We've learned to love phone banking. Say that to yourself 10 times every night. Okay. For my we did some phone banking for Marilyn Strickland, and she won her primary, so that's really exciting. We had a phone, and we've got phone banking parties ongoing now for Jen Perlman. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, 1 to 3 and 4 to 6. And to help keep the schedule together, because Adam also has phone banking, so you can phone bank 1 to 3 for Jen, and then from 4 to 5 for Adam, and then from 5 to 6 for Jen, all these days this week, except Jen has Tuesday off. So that's sometime you can call your mom or do something else on the phone. Here we are, Massachusetts. Yenny or Catherine, do you want to cover this?
I can do it. We're in GOBT mode for Massachusetts now. The mail-in ballots are out, so folks are filling them out and sending them back. So we are calling supporters of Robbie Goldstein to get him, get those ballots turned in. So come join us, and he's a fabulous candidate. The other Massachusetts candidate we have, Alex Morse, he has a crazy amount of volunteers from Justice Democrats and Sunrise. So we're exclusively putting our humanity forward, humanity first movement focus to help Robbie. But both of these candidates are very high favorables and, good shot to win their primaries. And because of the weirdness of Massachusetts, there are no challengers. There are no Republican challengers in the general. So whoever wins these primaries on September 1st, they're going to Congress. Come on in and help.
Hey. Thank you, Catherine. All right, and now we'll bring it over to Adam Christensen. So, Adam, you have the floor. Good. Is he unmuted?
Working on it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, how's everybody doing?
Great. Excited to meet you.
Good.
Hey.
I just wanted to come on and introduce myself. My name is Adam Christensen. I'm running for Florida's 3rd district, which, as most of you now know, is Ted Yoho's district. Most people didn't know where or what it was until about a few weeks ago, which is kind of crazy. I am 26-year-old. I've started a couple different companies since I graduated from college, and we are running an entirely youth-led campaign. So I am actually the old guy on the campaign, and we have about 50 people under the age of 23 that are running everything. And yeah, so that's kind of us right now. We are running, obviously, on universal basic income, Medicare for all. We're running an extremely progressive and left campaign, but in rural Florida. And it seems to be going very well. And we're really starting to be able to pick up some traction, especially with conservative voters. former or current Trump voters, independents, and obviously, Democrats. And so that's really what we've been focusing on, is making sure that we can not just propose things that are going to help people's lives, but actually be able to speak in a language that reaches them. And so that's something that we've done very well with. We've got a couple phone banking things that are coming up. Our primary is on the 18th. And so it is coming up very quickly. It's looking very good for us right now. And so we are going to start scaling and start really building to go into the general. And we will more than likely be facing a guy named Judson Sapp, who is the only candidate in the country that Roger Stone has endorsed, and is also touring with him right now to try to get him through his primary. And so that's kind of where we're at and how it's shaping up. So yeah, happy to be on. Were you going to ask a question, or did you just want me to keep?
Oh yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I was muted. Usually we do questions at the end. Does that sound? Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I can give you a breakdown of the district and everything like that. I just always think it's, more fun for people to kind of, ask questions and then be able to answer it and kind of, but we can do either way, works.
Okay. Yeah, no, let's shoot. All right. Questions about Adam. Anyone popping up from this introduction now? You can raise your Zoom hands. Well, starting out, I have a question. So in this rural red district, currently with a Republican representative, how do you bring across your progressive platform? Like, what are some of the talking points that, you've been having success with?
So the first thing we need to understand is, especially here, we have two of the hardest, lowest income counties in the entire state, and actually in the entire country. I think Union County's average income is $13,000 a year. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's filled with private prisons. I mean, almost the entire population is either in the prison industry or the prison system. And so really when we're talking to people, especially right now, I mean, nobody's doing well. Tons of people are about to lose their homes. They're not able to survive. They're not able to have a decent enough job to be able to survive. And so they're really just struggling, and they're fighting for survival. And I actually had a debate last night, and the people that we had on were Republicans, people from the rural parts of the county, because we need to be able to talk to them. We need to be able to reach them. And so, the very first question was, are you happy with the leadership in your party, at the top? And my response was, I grew up a Republican. I grew up a conservative Republican in Indiana. And the one thing that my family always taught me was that it didn't matter which party was in power. They didn't care whether or not I was going to live or die. They didn't care. They cared about themselves and their donors, and they cared about the people that backed them. And that was it. And so for me, as soon as you get past that and you start connecting with people on an emotional level and say, look, they don't care about us. It doesn't matter what we look like or who we are. They don't care about us. And so we have to actually focus on people. We have to make sure people are going to be okay. And that's where we start. And so I've actually found, especially right now, that emergency UBI of $2,000 a month is extremely receptive to. And the reason is I say, look, in 2008, you bailed out the biggest companies in the world. You gave money to the biggest banks in the world, and you were told that that would be good. You were told it was an investment. But what happened was they made all their money back, and they've done better than ever. And your lives got more expensive, and you never got a return on that investment. And now we just did it again. And we decided we were going to give money to the biggest companies in the world again, and we weren't going to take care of people like you and me. And as soon as you start talking about things like that and say, here's how we get through this, here's how we focus on small businesses and family-owned businesses in our small towns, and here's how we actually care about ourselves, then you can change a ton of minds. And you can be as left as possible and progressive. It doesn't matter, as long as you connect with people on an emotional level. And so that's kind of what we've found works really, really well, especially here.
I had a question, but I can't raise my Zoom hand, Colleen. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so Adam, you're going for your primary now, and I see that there's two other challengers. So when voters ask you, what is it that has you stand apart from those other two? Like what is your pitch that says you would be the best person to pass through the Democratic primary?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. We really saw it last night with the debate. We were the only ones that showed up. Like, I was the only one that showed up to the protest in Palatka, which is one of the rural towns outside of Gainesville. I mean, the people on the Democratic side who are running, they don't leave Alachua County. They don't go where it's difficult to talk to people. They don't make that effort to actually reach out to other communities. They just stay where they're comfortable. And what we understand is if we don't branch outside of Alachua County, we will never win this place. It will never happen. And so number one, not only are we not afraid to actually show up to things and actually march in the streets and actually show people, not just talk about things, but actually show it with actions. But on top of that, we're building the infrastructure in those locations to be able to carry our message forward for the general election. On top of that, obviously, we are not self-funding our campaign. Like, one of our opponents just dropped basically $43,000 of his own money into the campaign within the last week. I don't know why, but he couldn't compete with us on fundraising. Like, our average donation is $16 and it comes from everywhere. And on top of that, obviously, we're youth-led and we're a youth campaign. But what that means is that we were able to transition digitally for this election very quickly. And so that is kind of, the things that sets us apart. And at the same time, we are the most progressive campaign out there. And we're actually showing people that we're not just saying things, we're actually doing it. And our entire campaign is pretty much led by activists and organizers.
Andrew, you typed your question in chat. Can we hear you to ask it? Okay, no mic. All right, so Andrew was asking, you mentioned your campaign is youth-based. What are you doing for young people right now? And what beneficial policies for young people will you advocate for if elected?
Sure. The biggest, the pitch of our campaign has been and will continue to be, if you work 8 hours a day, you should be able to own a home. You should be able to start a family. You should have money left over. But right now we don't have that. And especially for college kids and people that are out of college, the number one reason that people cannot afford to get a home is because of predatory student debt. 17-year-olds are not allowed to buy tobacco. They're not allowed to buy alcohol. They're not allowed to serve in the military. But for some reason, we think it's okay for 17-year-olds to get $50,000 to $200,000 of predatory debt just to get an education. And so, number one, we have to get rid of that, because if we get rid of that, it will be the largest housing boom the United States has ever seen. It will be one of the large economic booms that we'll ever see. On top of that, we need to get rid of predatory companies in general. So we live in a location where predatory towing is horrendous. Every single person at the University of Florida knows that at some point they will be towed. They will have to pay $100 to $200 to get their car back. Or somebody's going to boot them because they left their car for 2 minutes to go across the street to get McDonald's or something like that. So we have to stop these kind of things from happening. And the people that those things are happening to are young people. The people who are not able to start a family are young people. And so at the end of the day, our campaign knows what actually affects us because we're being affected by it as well. Like, I've moved 5 times in 5 years, like apartments. We don't have stability. And so those are really the things we're hitting on, is because we know what it's like because it's us. We know how to represent ourselves because, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Kimberly, are you ready? You had your hand up for a question?
Yeah. So I like asking this, and seeming as how you are running a youth-led campaign and you're such an advocate for them. Are you in favor of lowering the voting age?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really talking about it, but yeah, I am. I mean, I think it should be 16. I think that if you can drive a car, you should be able to vote. It's just me.
Yeah, no, cool. I love that. Thank you. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you think that might empower young voters to get more actively involved in their younger years?
Well, I think right now, especially, we are seeing youth activism at a level that we've never seen before because of things like TikTok, because of social media, because they're able to organize. I mean, we saw the kids out of Parkland organize better than gun rights activists have been able to organize for years. What we're seeing is it doesn't matter your age, it matters your will and your how much you want it at the end of the day. And what we're seeing is when people actually see that they can have a voice and they can actually be powerful, and it doesn't matter who they are or their age, it happens. I mean, for most of the people on our campaign, the reason they believed that we could run this congressional campaign is because we saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez be able to do it in New York, is because we saw young people, the youngest people that have ever been elected, actually successfully do it. And so we saw this year hundreds of young people run all over the country for all levels of office. And so when people actually see people like them that can do things that they never thought were within reach, it actually inspires people to do those things. And so for us, you know, I am so excited to see who comes out of our campaign that worked on our campaign and what they do going forward because of what they did here. And I think at the end of the day, what we're not just building something that is short-sighted. We are building a blueprint for how young people can actually take power back or take power for themselves. And the example I always use is most of the people that get elected into office, especially in Congress or the Senate, are 50 years or older. And the people who go to vote for them actually believe that they're going to represent them. And the people that go to vote in the highest amounts and margins are people that are over the age of 50. Well, if you see somebody your age who looks like you, has the same background as you, you're going to think that that person is going to represent you. But if you have nobody that's 25 years old, if you have nobody that's 20 years old in your local elections or running for Congress or anything like that, you're not going to think that those people know what it's like for you. And so you're far less likely to be excited about them, and you're far less likely to actually go vote for them. And so we're starting to see that, especially with young people across the country, we're seeing more youth activism and more people going to vote simply because they're actually being able to vote for people like them.
Thank you.
Yenny, you have a question?
Yes. I'd like to know how you came to UBI and Yang and what what brought you to UBI.
Oh, what brought? So I was actually asked about 2 years ago. I had just started dating my girlfriend, and she asked me, and I don't know why we were talking about this, but she was like, if you had one dream policy, what would it be? And my response, like I thought a couple seconds, and I was like, well, you know, my dream policy, if it ever got implemented, I don't think it will, because I don't think the Overton window is ever going to be there, but I would love to actually do a universal basic income, because I think it would be one of the biggest things that could help with the wealth gap and actually give people the power to have some control over their lives. And then she was like, well, what's UBI? And so I explained. And then I saw Andrew Yang actually like not just talk about it, but make it a policy, the main policy platform for his campaign. And, you know, at that moment, I was like, I don't know what he's going to be able to do. I don't know if he's going to be able to push this into the mainstream. And then he did. And I just sat there going, I don't know how he did that, but I love the fact that he did that. And that is absolutely amazing. And so that's kind of like, I knew about UBI before Andrew Yang, but watching it actually like a policy that I had read about and I had thought about and I knew about, but I had never seen somebody actually advocate for. I thought seeing that in real life was just absolutely amazing. I don't know what's going on with my screen.
I think the video froze. Oh, now you disappeared. Oh, there you are. And you're muted.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Standard electronic conference. It's okay, it happens. All right. Can we unmute him? All right, there we go.
Yeah. So I think the other question that I have that's part of that is obviously UBI is not necessarily something that is literally going to fix everything. There are other things that still need to happen in addition to that. And which of them do you identify as the most important?
Yeah, and the way that I think about this is, you want to give people more money, right? But you don't want to just give them more money so then they're spending it on higher expenses. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, we want them to be able to actually do something with that money that they have and have some freedom and have the ability to have, like, take their lives back. And so the couple biggest things, I think, and I call them middle-class tax cuts because that's what they are. At the end of the day, they're going to give people significant amounts of money back. One is universal childcare. It has an ROI of 1.25. So every dollar you put in, you get $1.25 back. And that would free up about $8,000 to $10,000 per family, per child, per year. And so that's almost $8,000 right back in the pockets of most families. On top of that, Medicare for All is going to save small businesses and really families about $8,000 to $10,000 as well. So you implement those two things, and people have $20,000 to $22,000 back each year that they never had before. And for somebody who lives in Union County, where the average income that they're bringing in is $13,000 a year, you just doubled their income overnight. And so for me, UBI, wonderful. Medicare for All has to happen. Universal childcare needs to happen. And if you do those things, I think that once they have that money back, again, they should not just want to have to spend it on expenses. Like, we need to give them an avenue to be able to actually have control of their lives. And so one thing that I proposed, actually the building behind me, this is called the Innovation Hub. It's in downtown Gainesville, Florida. And it's basically a small business incubator with funding. And it basically has office space, has affordable office space, has a mentorship program. And basically anybody who has an idea can apply to be in here. Show that their idea, they actually could do it and build a business out of it. And then they get support to be able to actually start that small business. And so what we need to be able to do is put locations like that in all of our small towns that really focus on small and family-owned businesses and community businesses. Because right now, well, the one thing we don't have is jobs and companies coming to these areas simply because, well, all the jobs take the money out of these areas. So we have Nestle right now who's coming in to bottle water in High Springs. And if they do that, they're going to dry up the town of High Springs, and the town of High Springs is going to be gone. And so, like, we're seeing the rural towns stand up and actually fight against giant companies who are killing small businesses here. So we need to grow small businesses, family-owned businesses. And I think the best way we can do that is by, one, getting people money back in their pockets and enough money to be able to do it, and then giving them a location and a system to be able to grow those businesses and actually take their ideas and benefit their communities with them.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question is Joshua Frick. Joshua, let's see. Can you unmute yourself? All right, Joshua, can you unmute yourself? I'm trying to find you.
I don't see him in the participant list at the moment. He might have dropped off and be rejoining.
Okay, all right. We'll keep an eye out for him. Yeah.
I had one more question if there's not someone else waiting.
Yeah, go on, Catherine.
So when people are calling phone banking for you in the district, like, what's the economic circumstances? Like, who are like the primary employers? Like, just to help people be conversant with, who they're talking to when they're talking to your voters.
So it's, it really depends on what town that the person lives in. So for instance, in Palatka, it's very small, very rural, but there's a paper mill basically that is the biggest employer in Palatka. And so it's not a good company. It's an absolutely awful company. But at the same time, it's the only reason, or one of the only reasons, that the town still exists. In Clay County, in parts of Clay County, like the Jacksonville suburbs area, a lot more wealthy. And the biggest employers there are places like Walmart and McDonald's and things like that. Alachua is a little bit different. We have the city itself. That's where the University of Florida is at. So the University of Florida is actually one of the biggest employers. So it really depends on what town, because they are so different. Like our messaging and our branding and our marketing for Alachua is completely different on what we focus on compared to Clay County, which is completely different than Bradford, which is completely different than Palatka, or the northern part of Marion County, which is Ocala area. So we have a very large Latino and Hispanic population in the southern part of our district. We have a very large, basically middle-class white area in the northeastern part of our district. Alachua is everything, everybody and everything. It's the basically the blue spot within the giant red district. Union County is almost all prisons or prisoners. Bradford is extremely poor as well, and there's not much there as far as large companies. So at the end of the day, the thing, like I said, the biggest thing you can do is connect emotionally with people and show that their circumstances, whatever they are, like we understand them and we actually care about whether or not they're going to have a decent life, and show them that we have plans to do that. So like, for instance, in Palatka or Putnam County, I talk almost exclusively about a federal jobs guarantee to make sure that if you want a job, you're going to have one and it's going to pay very well. For Alachua County, the climate issues are number one always. Clay County is actually more faith-based as well, and more somewhat economic. It kind of shifts depending on what part of Clay County. Bradford and Union is really all about jobs, and that's it. And then also especially faith. And so those are the biggest issues and really things that people want to talk about when we talk to them.
Thank you. Kimberly, did you have, yeah, Kimberly?
Yeah, I was just curious, as a small business owner, what skill have you gained from your time doing that has helped you in your campaign? And what do you anticipate the skills that you've learned from being a small business owner helping you in the future as a congressperson?
So I refer to this campaign as my third startup. I'll put it like this. So at the beginning of a business, a small business or a campaign, you have the idea that you think will work. And then you go out and you start talking and trying to make sure that number one, you can do it. And number two, that it's viable and that there's actually a market for that idea or for that product or for what you're doing. Then you test it, you build the prototype, you build the website, you get, the social media out there, you get the branding out there, you figure out what you want to do as far as logos, all of that kind of stuff. And then you get to the point where it's time to scale and it's time to actually build the team. It's time to actually move it forward. It's actually time to grow it as quickly as possible. And so I would honestly say that growing a small business is almost the exact same as running for office. It's the exact same mindset. It's almost the exact same process, depending on how you do it. Some people decide they need to bring on $200,000 to $500,000 right at the start to start a small business, and then hope that they can inflate the value and get out before it crashes. A lot of campaigns are run that way too, where somebody right at the start they bring on $300,000 or $500,000, and they're like, okay, we're going to build a campaign. The way that I kind of thought about it was in the same way I thought about my business. I started my first company with $3,000, and I said, if I can't make it work with $3,000, there's no reason to believe I could do it with $100,000. And so we started with nothing, no funding, basically, and just built it organically so that, number one, it grew at the right pace, but also the fundamentals were there and the basics were there. And we actually built a structure that could scale, and we made sure it could scale before we started bringing on money and trying to scale it. And so I think that we've done a very good job at that, and just making sure that what we've actually built will stay here, whether or not we lose, whether or not this race ends. The organizing structure and the infrastructure that we built will be able to go on for multiple cycles as opposed to just this year. And so that I'm really proud of.
Thank you.
Right on. And just out of curiosity, the second part of that was what do you think will lead you into being a successful congressman?
My day job is catching corporate fraud. My day job is figuring out which big suppliers are trying to screw over small and family-owned businesses in the natural products industry. And so basically somebody brings me a product and they say, is this real? Can you figure it out for me? And then I call BS or tell them, yeah, sure, you should buy that. It's the right price. It's not fraudulent. It's good for you. And so that's kind of the way that I've approached this is, at the end of the day, most of the things that we have and the industries that we have, they're completely fraudulent. Most of the products are not good products, but they've been marketed very well. They've been branded very well. And what I've learned, especially through my business, is that the biggest companies in the world are not the ones that have the best product. They're the ones with the best distribution. They're the ones with the best marketing. And so what we have seen for, I think, the last 40 years is political parties that they do not have good policy, they do not have good ideas, but they're able to get people to attach emotionally to it, and they're able to market and brand themselves in a way that makes people want those things, despite the fact that they're not good for them, or they're fake, or they're fraudulent. And so for me, being able to pick out what is real and what is not, and what is actually going to be helpful, I think is a huge advantage just in mindset of how someone going to Congress and going to be sitting on these committees actually has to think and react.
Yeah, I have another question. I've seen that your district was elected a Democratic congressperson for like the beginning of the 2000s, 2010, and then flipped red. And what's been, how are the winds of change there that it's looking to, is it looking to flip blue, or like what's been the response to Yoho's thing?
Gerrymandering.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering is the reason that it is red now. So actually it was worse. Oh, it was worse. When Ted Yoho first ran, it was so badly gerrymandered that they were forced to go back and redraw it. And so what we've seen is a gradual shift, even in a super red district, towards more Democratic or left-leaning ideals. And so what we've seen is a gradual shift where it's been trending in the right direction, but it's not there yet. And we are hoping to be able to kick down that door just in how we're running our campaign. The Ted Yoho thing, number one, put North Central Florida on the map. Nobody knew where this was, and nobody really had any idea about who he was. He was one of only 4 people to vote against making lynching a federal crime. He didn't think the Civil Rights Act was constitutional. He doesn't believe in the Survivors' Bill of Rights or the ERA. Like, this is who the guy is. And yet nobody really did anything about it or really made the case, simply because he wasn't brazen enough to actually do most of this, like what he did on the steps of the Capitol. Like, it was not, how do I put this? It didn't make national news, not because it shouldn't have, but because he did it in a way that was so boring that nobody thought that anybody would care. And so what we saw, especially with AOC, is that it's very clear who he is and who he was. And now it's just blatantly obvious in a way that makes for a good story. And so what we realized beforehand was we have to get rid of this guy to begin with. We have to get rid of his infrastructure. We have to beat whoever he tries to set up. We have to get rid of his donors, and we have to organize to do that. And so we had already created all the infrastructure and pretty much everything that we had before that happened. And as soon as it happened, things took off because of it. So in a way, what he did was actually a gift to our area, because it showed people that we can't ever have that again.
Thank you. Joshua, you're here now for the question.
Yeah, sorry, I had to switch from my phone to my PC. So actually, I actually am curious what Adam thinks about this. I had a separate question, but with respects to Representative Yoho, so I actually was aware of him because he's a Freedom Caucus member, and I found it strange that he and AOC weren't able to get along, because they agree on this one fundamental issue that is like my top issue. they refuse to dial for dollars. And I found it strange because, Yoho isn't like leaving because he's worried. He's honoring his term limits commitment in 2012. And I just wanted to mention that because I've said this before, but like I'm a right-leaning independent. So like some of Andrew Yang, he brought in a bunch of different people into his, fan group and whatnot. But yeah, I see that differently. I feel like AOC is kind of like playing that up a little bit, and I actually respect Congressman Yoho. I want to give you that feedback. Maybe the voters in your district don't feel that way.
Yeah, well, the thing is, especially the people in our district, I think they understand that Ted Yoho is not doing this because he's honoring some commitment. It's because he's only been in Congress, I think, 2 years where he has had any amount of power or any amount of ability to do anything besides just say no. And he's also realized he can make way more money being the person behind the scenes that actually pushes through everything than he can by just being in office. So, for instance, his former campaign manager is running to replace him using his donors, his backing, his infrastructure, everything that he's got. So him claiming that he's stepping down and relinquishing power, that's a lie. At the end of the day, he's not relinquishing power. He's just stepping behind the scenes, behind the curtain, and he's still fully in control. And so people here understand that, and they see that, if just because his name is no longer on the ballot does not mean that anything will ever fundamentally change, because his ideology will still be there, his donors will still be there, his entire power structure will still be there. And so what they understand is if you do not get rid of those things, then you never actually replace Ted Yoho, because in politics, you can put a new face or a new name, but if you never actually remove the people or the structure that got them there in the first place, then nothing will ever change.
That's a good point. I wish that Nancy Pelosi would step down and let her campaign manager step in and she run it from behind. But anyways, the question I had for you is, I'm super excited that Andrew and Humanity Forward are supporting candidates in Florida, because it's a battleground state and there's so much valuable, I think there's so many elections here that are really toss-ups. I wanted to know if you had any opinions on the race in Florida 15, where I believe the incumbent is a one-term Republican. He got my attention because he was talking about on Twitter that we need to build the wall, and I thought that was a dead horse. So I think that guy's an idiot. And we have three.
Do you know the name?
Russ Spano is the incumbent there, and then Alan Cohen, Adam Hattersley, and Jesse Felipe are the candidates in the Democratic primary. And then I also think that right next door to you in District 6, Richard Thripp and Clint Curtis are running. And so I just was wondering what your thoughts were on those other races.
I don't know 15 very well. We've been kind of focused. Richard's a great guy. We've talked quite a bit. I'm not entirely certain how his race is going at the moment, but I like the guy a lot.
Okay, that's fair. Good luck.
All right.
Thanks. I wish I was able to actually pay attention to other people's races, but we have been focused on not just our race, but actually our House district races as well, because this year is one of the first years that Florida has put up Democratic challengers in every single race in Florida, especially because of the fact that next year is redistricting, and that wasn't going to happen. And so we were 90 for 90, which was out of Virginia, which helped them flip the state there. And then also the Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida basically helped find and make sure that people could run in every single House district seat across the state. We were not going to have multiple House district candidates in our location, in our district, but we were able to help and partner with them and make sure we had somebody in every single House district, because I realized very quickly that, the better that they do, the better I'm going to do. And the better that I do, the better that the Democratic Party does in November in the state of Florida with the presidential. And so for us, we are focusing basically on fighting for every single acre of land. We are fighting for every single vote, and we're not letting Republicans in our district have any free passes, because what I realized is, and what most people are starting to realize is, you don't play a football game with 8 players against 11. And that's what the Florida Democratic Party has done for years here in Florida. And I don't play defense. That does not happen. So we have gone on offense, especially in our district. And so we've got 4 out of the 5 House district candidates partnering with our campaign in order to get out the vote, in order to register people, in order to get vote by mail, in order to actually organize this location in a way that has never happened before. And so that's kind of that's why I've been a little focused.
Well, you actually touched on, because where I was going with that big picture was, I'm wondering, how much interaction you've had with the Florida Democratic Party in general. And the reason I ask that is, a lot of people think that, I live in Dallas, Texas, so a lot of people think that Texas is going to turn blue. And I think that that's a real thing, but I've also lived here 32 years and I'll believe it when I see it. So that makes Florida uber important. And I'm wondering what kind of collection and what type of camaraderie there is among all the groups that you talk to.
Currently, and in the previous years, there's been very little support for House district candidates or congressional candidates in races that are above +5 Republican. We are hoping that that changes, especially this year and going forward, because what we've seen is it is more effective to actually challenge everywhere than only challenge in 1 or 2 places. Because if you allow, let's put it this way, if, like I said, if you play with 8 players on a field, at the end of the day, you might score a couple of touchdowns, you might get lucky, but you're going to lose 9 times out of 10 simply because you are outmanned and outgunned, and there were more people on the other side, and you had to divide your resources. And you can have the best players, but if you're not actually forcing them to spend money or campaign or actually create infrastructure in places they never wanted to, then you're not actually going to efficiently and effectively be able to counter that. So in the past, Republicans didn't have to actually run anyone. Basically, they didn't have any challengers, which means they didn't have a primary or a general election, so they could move all of their resources to the contested races, which meant that in the contested races, they were triple or quadruple teaming those people. And so, yeah, you can win a lot of contested races, but at the same time, if you are getting outmanned and outgunned and outspent every single time, you're not going to be able to do as well. And so what we've realized is it's not a good strategy. Just across the board, it's not a good strategy. And so I'm glad that the Florida Democratic Party is starting to realize that, and they are starting to change the way that they have effectively done things. And so I don't know what's going to happen in Texas. I don't know what's going to happen in Florida. I can only speak about our district, and we have received little to no support whatsoever from the Florida Democratic Party at this point from the heads. But at the same time, we are organizing our location with the understanding that when we make this race close, that they will see that and actually want to come in and help. And so we are building it. It's the build it and they will come kind of mentality. And that is what we have taken. And either way, we're going to do very well. And either way, we've built something that is good and will last. And we're hoping that they come in at the end and actually push us over the line as well.
One answer. Thank you so much for that.
I've got a quick question. How many people are you trying to call in your get out the vote operation?
I think we have a list of 20,000 right now that we are wanting to call within the next week and a half. And those are all people that have vote by mail ballots at this moment. And so we've already called, I think we called over 6,000 or 7,000 people this last week. And so we're trying to ramp that up and hit every single one of them. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I think that's wrapping up our Q&A segment. And Adam, you had a wonderful slide with some data. So how about we go back to screen share? You want to tell us a little bit about your district in terms of its numbers? Let's see if I'm working on this.
Yeah, I remembered I had done that. And then I was like, oh, I guess we're going to be talking about other stuff because I forgot about it.
Oh, okay.
That's my bad. It's not your bad.
Yeah, I don't.
No worries.
If it shows up. It seems like I'm having technical difficulties here. It was a great slide. I hope we get to it. Okay.
I can share my screen instead if you want me to.
Yeah, do that, Yanni. Thank you. Oh, here.
I was going to say, like, in terms of time, could we move on to his phone banking slide and then maybe we can keep going?
What was that, Elaine?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying because I know we have a bunch of other slides to get to, that phone banking might be the most important one before we move on.
The end. These are the last slides.
Yep, this is the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Thanks, Yanni. You saved the day.
Yeah, so I mean, as you can kind of see right there, you know, our average income here in this district is ridiculously low. It's basically survival level at this point, and that was really before the pandemic. And so those numbers are obviously not accurate, but that's what it was before the pandemic. And as we all know, you know, 40% of people in the United States only had $400 in their bank account for an unexpected expense before the pandemic, and we are 5 months into this. And so it's not going well. We have basically the average, you know, household income for the Asian community is almost $4,000 less than the average for white households. Hispanic is $20,000. Black households are $30,000 less. And one of the biggest things, especially with this pandemic, let me check and see what is going on here. Oh, there we go. One of the biggest things, you know, that we are dealing with, especially everyone across the country is dealing with, is housing. They're estimating about 28 million people may be homeless or evicted within the next few months, which is unfeasible number, like just unthinkable numbers. But what we already had before this was the fact that 75% of our minority communities already had issues with housing. And 30% of them were severe issues with housing and being able to afford and basically having locations to live and stay and, you know, stability. And so what we are looking at and what we were looking at when we first started this campaign and what we were first talking about, it never changed. That's what's crazy is that our messaging before the pandemic was almost the exact same as after the pandemic happened, because nothing fundamentally changed. It just exasperated the issues we already had. And so, you know, right now, especially, we have to fix these issues, make sure that people have a home, make sure they have stability, make sure they have enough money to, you know, actually take care of themselves and, you know, have a decent life. And at the end of the day, that's not radical. We're not fighting for anything that's radical. We are literally fighting for the American dream, or at least what we've been told is supposed to be the American dream, but we've never actually seen. And so that is right now, especially here, just a rallying cry for people. And so it's something that, you know, even I'm dealing with it. Our campaign is dealing with it. The people on our campaign are dealing with it. The people that we talk to every single day are dealing with it. And so it's one of those things where we don't have a choice. We have to change this, or else we're only going to be fighting for survival forever. And so that's kind of the way that's almost the message, and kind of the way we talk about this is, we know what's wrong. We just need to fix it.
So we did have another slide for you, Adam, on the issues. I think that we've kind of gone over. Yeah. And then we've got the phone banking schedule slide.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of phone banking coming up pretty much all this week. We got, what do we got? We got 9 days left till actual voting day. Almost half the ballots actually have already been turned in because of vote by mail or early voting, which is great. So it looks like we're going to have record turnout for this primary. At the same time, you know, there's a lot of people whose minds that we can still change and actually get to vote for us. We've had great reactions and anecdotal evidence, and everything else that's come through has all been extremely positive. It's kind of crazy because when we're actually talking to people on the phone, like 80 to 90% of them, number one, know who we are, or are already voting for us, which is just great. And so we're getting very positive feedback, especially in this primary. We're even last night with me talking to Republicans, we were getting great feedback from them as well, where they loved the things that we were talking about, like UBI, like a federal jobs guarantee. And so really talking about the basics and talking about, literally it's the basics. It's housing. It's making sure that they're taken care of, that their families are taken care of, and they're not scared of losing their home. At this moment is really the biggest things to talk about, and making sure that people actually have enough money. They're working, and so they should be able to be making enough money to survive.
Yeah. All right, if that's the last slide, Yenny, could you hop off screen share, please? Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks. Could you end screen share at this time? Great. Okay. Yeah, I would just add on with that, with the phone banking, that this pandemic time phone banking is really different from before, where sometimes you might procrastinate getting involved and just help out at the GOTV time and that last weekend, when it's like, people are still deciding now, and I'll get to that. I'll get them before they vote. Well, since people are mailing in ballots, hey, we're going in early. I'm so distracted now. It's really right now is the peak time to be calling people, because if you wait to the last GOTV, more and more people will have already voted. So, yeah. And it's been, so make those calls. We'll be having phone bank, like Zoom parties at these shifts. All right. I think we're in a hang now. We've got Pommel with us.
Thank you to everyone who's been watching us on YouTube.
Thanks for joining us, Adam. Really, really appreciate your time. And we're going to drum up some phone bankers. Come your way, join that GOTV effort, and help you in this final 9-day push. So